series of moves we looked at involved, sit down for me. The last series of moves we looked at involved this position here, which we call the cross ashigarami. Okay. Another name you guys may have heard for this position is the saddle. Right. It's another pretty common name for this position. So the cross ashigarami position is very, very well suited for controlling an opponent, but it's not ideally suited for breaking someone, specifically because it's pretty difficult to expose someone's heel in this position if he's defensively knowledgeable, right? Because what he can do is he can hide the heel here, make it very difficult for me to expose it, okay? So as a result, this position, the cross ashigarami with the saddle position, is very, very good for controlling him and transitioning into other positions, but it's not the best to finish people from. You can get a lot of finishes here, but the finishes are mainly going to be against people that don't know the defense, which is hiding the heel, okay? Now, there is an upper body equivalent to this position that I want to introduce you guys to right now, which has many of the same properties of the cross ashigarami. So that's, if you want, you call that the leg saddle. We're now going to look at the arm saddle, okay? Where it's a very strong controlling position, and we can use this to transition into many other offensive positions, but you're not usually going to finish someone from this position itself, okay? So let's first take a look at what the position is, and then we'll look at how to get there. So I'm here, and you're going to put your cross face on me, make a shoulder crunch, and I push, and now he hides his hand. Now if he did not bring the hand inside, obviously we can armbar him right here, right, of course. But no one, I mean, I shouldn't say no one, but most people are not going to let you do that. So you're going to wind up in this position here where we have tremendous control over him, but it's hard to, again, it's not impossible, but it's hard to get the finish right here. Usually you have to move somewhere else to get the finish, okay? So this position, basically the way both the cross ashigarami and the arm saddle work is by you move to the position and it creates a defensive reaction. He has to defend. If he doesn't defend, he's going to get finished right there. That defensive reaction allows us to connect into other forms of offense, okay? Both submission-based and position-based, okay? It all comes from the threat of the initial submission, all right? So, all right, let's look specifically how can we get to this arm saddle. There's two main ways we can look to get there. Just as with entangling someone's legs, if I want to entangle someone's arms, we can use proactive methods of elevation to do so, all right? Where I grasp the triceps and I elevate him, and now he senses that I'm going for his legs, right? Maybe we're gonna go for the Gerry Masana like we just looked at, right? And he senses, okay, I'm making this scoop grip to go for his legs. A super common reaction you see here is people sit back. Yeah, you sit back hard. They sit back hard, right? And if you keep going for the legs, you miss your opportunity, all right? In such cases, if I elevate somebody and I feel, as I go for the legs, he's sitting back hard, switch to the arms. The window of opportunity you have to gain an arm entanglement is wider than it is for the legs, because his arms are always going to be, his arms and shoulders are always going to be over mine for a longer period of time, okay? Because they're in front of his hips, right? So it's easier for him to sit his hips back, therefore the window of opportunity to gain access to them is smaller, okay? So when we feel, I'll come back one second, when we feel as if the window of opportunity to gain access to a leg entanglement is just too small because he's sitting back, he goes to sit back, you have a good opportunity to get a hold of his arms. All right, so from this grip, we call this a shoulder crunch grip. What I want to do is I take my first hand, it goes over like so, and it pushes down. I connect my hands with a gable grip, okay? Not this shallow, go a little bit deeper, go about here. Now here, what I want to do is, I want to have my forearm situated on a diagonal line from shoulder to hip. What we don't want to do is have my forearm come down. Well, I don't want this against his chin. This is a common mistake people make. Why? Because if I'm here and I'm going against his chin and he brings his chin down, like he goes like this, he can arm triangle me, right? That's obviously not what we want. Whereas if I'm framing here, it's never going to happen. You guys can see that. See how my forearm would be? It's like this, not this, here, okay? Now, I want my right elbow very high, okay? If it's low, if my right elbow goes low, look what happens to my left elbow. It goes into his chin, which is, again, not what we want. Yeah, you pass off to that arm triangle. All right, so we're here, my right elbow is nice and high. Now my right foot goes on his hip, Okay, that's regulating distance. So as he drives into me, I can keep him at bay. But ultimately what we want to do is, I'm going to take my right foot and I'm going to pass that to his far hip. So it goes to his far hip. All right? Now as I do this, I'm going to fall backwards. Just come down nice and slow. I'm going to fall backwards, and initially my left forearm is acting as a frame so he can't crush me. As I fall backwards, I replace that with my left knee. Okay? So with my left forearm, now it's my left knee. Okay, now I'm going to push, and my leg rolls over the top, and I put my foot on initially his near hip, but then it's going to pass to his far hip. Okay? Keep a good, nice structure. So, no, not high, just, yeah, perfect, just like this, very good. Now when we're here, my right leg, guys, this is very important. I don't want to just leave it flat on the mat. Yep, because then he can just grab it, and he's probably going to get out. Yeah, that's no good. So what I want to do is I want to hook around the armpit, like so. Okay? You can see how my right leg is curling. It's much harder for him. I'm not going to say he can't grab it whatsoever, right? I mean, it's definitely a possibility of him still grabbing it, but it's way harder for him to get a hold of it. Okay? So it's curling like this. Now, from here, we can either have a shoulder crunch grip or we can have a Kimura grip. For the move we're going to look at here, we're going to go for a Kimura grip. So what I do is I start to turn this way, and my foot, the foot goes from a curl, and in order to get my forehead to the mat, it posts on the mat. My right foot, that is, okay? And now I gain, my left hand goes underneath, and I gain a Kimura. Okay, now I come all the way so my forehead's on the mat. Now he's going to grab my ankle. It's available for him then, right? It became available because I wanted to invert and I had to use my foot on the mat to do so, okay? But his gripping there can actually, in this situation, help me gain a front triangle. So I'm going to turn. Now look at my left foot, guys. It's going to go at the crook of his elbow, and I'm going to keep spinning in the same direction. And now I use that to strip his grip, and I lock up a trap triangle. Right now it's just my ankles, okay? Now I use my left hand to grab his head, and now I lock up like a more traditional figure 4 triangle. Okay, from here, yeah, you get your strangle, or you can go for an arm lock, up to you, okay? So, again, it starts from offense generated against his legs, okay? I'm elevating the guy with the intention of wrapping up. I could go to a standard ashi or a cross ashi, okay? He senses that, and he sits his weight back. So instead of missing an opportunity altogether, I'm going to go for his arms instead, okay? Because they're still available to me. I now post on his hip with my right hip as he drives into me, and I keep him at bay with that. Now I'm going to take my right foot off of his hip and to his far hip. Now as I fall down, I replace my forearm with my knee and my shin. Now I push and I pummel over the top, and it starts on this hip. Some attacks in this position are from this hip, but most of them are going to be when we're connected to the far hip. All right, now I initially curl so he can't grasp my foot, okay? But ultimately for this specific move, what I want to do is I want to post my foot on the mat so I can start to come up. Now I grasp a Kimura. At the same time, he's going to grab my ankle. That's actually going to help me because now if his arm is tight, bring your elbow tight, how am I going to get that triangle, right? There's no way. Here I would go for his back, right? But now, because his extension on his arm, right? That extension allows me to fit this foot inside, and now I can strip that grip. I can lock up a trap triangle. I can grab his head and lock up a very tight front triangle here, and you can get this triangle, or you could switch to an arm bar. Okay? Does this make sense, guys? Yep. Yes. Any questions? No? I know there's not. So I push here, goes here, and here. Okay? He grabs that ankle. That's what he should do. That's a good response. If his elbow stays tight, he can't grab the ankle, and I can take his back. If I were to try to go back one step, if I were to try to front triangle this, that's pretty hard, basically impossible, right? But I can take his back. But when he posts, now the front triangle is available. And you take the front triangle and look to finish him with that. So this is an example of the creation of a dilemma. where he's got a choice between two different attacks. He can stay tight and get his back taken, or we're gonna practice right now the front triangle where he extends the arm. I think you're gonna find pretty often people are gonna extend their arm, the ankle's there, they see it. It's a natural thing that people are gonna grab it, okay? All right, any other questions, guys? Okay, guys, so in this part of the video, we're now gonna look at some match footage to see examples of the arm saddle being used at a high level. And we're going to analyze the way in which our opponent's defensive reaction dictates which of the available offensive options we're going to go with from the arm saddle. Okay, there's quite a lot of good offensive options we can go with from the arm saddle. Okay, and what we're going to look at is that his defensive reactions largely dictate which options become available to us. Okay, and which options we ought to go for. Okay, the most important thing to take note of in the arm saddle initially is going to be, there's two things we need to take account of, okay? It's how high are his shoulders, and is he grasping his hands together, and or is he grasping his own thigh, okay? Anyway, let's get started with the matches. So the first match is Gianni Grippi versus Emilia Hernandez. Let's just look at the whole sequence and we'll break it down. So you see here, he's in the arm saddle, and Emilia Hernandez's hands are connected, so that's how he's defending the straight arm lock in this situation. If his hands are open, he would just get arm barred here, or maybe Kimura. So he's connecting his hands to block that. That's going to give Gianni the opportunity here to backstep into the back. This is probably the main thing you should always be looking for from the arm saddle from the outset. Okay, it's the first thing you should be looking for. All right, let's look at that sequence. So first of all, this is a good example of the way we can integrate the arm saddle into our pre-existing arm lock game. Okay, here obviously this is not a traditional arm saddle entry. He's going from a Kimura. Emilio's got a single leg. Gianni he grasps a Kimura. Okay, now they fall into a T Kimura situation with his leg on the inside. That'll happen oftentimes when you get a Kimura from a single leg situation, and we're going to see later it can also happen when you go from a rolling Kimura situation. Regardless, common reaction in the T Kimura, he's usually either going to scissor his legs and come up to his base, at which point there's space between his elbow and his hip where you can put your knee in. You can go to try to take his back right here, but Emilia is a bit faster than Gianni, and he's unable to take his back right away. Okay, now from this point, Gianni allows himself to slide down, and because he's still got the Kimura, he can very easily transition into the arm saddle. So he was going for the back, he missed it. Emilia was a little bit faster than him, and now he wound up in the arm saddle. Okay, this is a really great way we can get into the arm saddle, and we can launch all of our various attacks from the position. Okay, now from this position here, again, you want to take account of how high are his shoulders, and are his hands connected, or is he grasping his own thigh? If he's grasping his own thigh, this hand would be free for Emilio to start like pushing this leg down, doing all sorts of things to create defensive problems for Gianni. But because it's not, okay, because he's grasping his hands, that hand is not free. All right. In such situations, we're going to see that the back take is usually the best choice. Okay, if he's got his hands connected, as long as his posture is not too high, and here it's hard for Emilio to really posture up too high because Gianni's got this Kimura grip. Okay, so you see here, Gianni's basically able to hang on him like a weight because of that Kimura grip. When we get to the arm saddle, there's two main grips we can form. We can use some sort of like a butterfly type grip, okay, or we could grasp our own thigh, or we can form a Kimura grip. Okay, there are advantages to both. Okay, however, the Kimura grip is usually the better option when we want to start shifting into offense. I think most of the time the butterfly grip, shoulder crunch style grip is better when we want to like initially obtain the position. I think there are advantages to it in that area, but when we start initiating our actual offense, you know, the various attacks we're going to launch from the position, I think the Kimura grip is stronger. One reason is that it's more sticky. It's harder for the guy to just pull his arm out and escape the situation altogether. As you see here, Gianni's really hanging on Emilio like a weight. Hard to get off, right? Hard to escape this position. So Gianni's hanging on him, and because his hands are connected, he's able to fluidly transition right into the back. Whereas if we take a look right here, right when Gianni went for the back, if Emilio's hands were not connected, this hand would very easily be able to grasp the ankle. However, if he were to do that, he would be extending his limb. Okay, we're going to see in a bit that would offer Gianni the opportunity to potentially sequence into a front triangle, as we looked at earlier in the video of that technique I was teaching at that seminar in South Carolina. Okay, so Gianni backsteps, and he's able to very fluidly transition into a back control. Now, the next technique, or rather the next match, is Nicky Ryan against Phil Harris at Polaris, where this time we're going to see as Nicky goes into the front triangle. Okay, he gets to the arm saddle all the same. The entry is different, but he gets into the same position, the arm saddle. And instead of going to the back, what we're going to see is he goes to the front triangle. And we're going to see what defensive reactions of his opponent, Phil Harris, caused that to be the offense he went with rather than the back. And we're going to look at how that was different than Emilia Hernandez's defensive reactions. Okay, first of all, Nicky gets to the position in a completely different way. He's going for a shoulder crunch grip here from the bottom. So this is a reactive entry where Phil Harris's arm is extending to create offense, and Nicky's capitalizing upon that limb extension with a shoulder crunch. There's two main types of shoulder crunches. There's head in and head out. Oftentimes, we're going to go head in at first, but ultimately, we almost always want to get the head out. Let's take a look at how Nicky does that. So he's got the head in at first because it's an easier grip to get. Now look at how he pummels. I can't really see it too well, but you could start to see the beginning of him doing it right here. See how he's bringing that elbow down there? Right, just like I described in the technique portion of the video. You always want to get your elbow on that side of his head, okay? You don't really get to see it too well because of the camera angle, but that's ultimately what he's looking to do. I don't even know really if he's achieved it. Anyway, so he does get to an arm saddle here. But what we're going to see is Phil Harris does a good job. He's grasping his hands, and he's posturing up high. So what we see here, the reason why Nicky missed this, so Nicky gets the Kimura grip, okay, and he rolls through. Right here, he has the opportunity. He could potentially go for the back step into the back, okay. He's basically right there. But Phil postures up pretty high, and so Nicky goes for the front triangle instead. But the issue is that he's able to pull his arm out, okay. Sometimes that's going to happen. Now, if we look at the second sequence, we're going to see Nicky succeed in getting to the front triangle. So same thing, it's a head-in arm. See, that's a much better example of what I was talking about. This is a head-in shoulder crunch. Look at what he does with his left elbow. So he brought that in front. That's very key. Now he can push with that. Now he can push with his left leg. It goes over the top, and he pummels right into. Now here he's got an arm saddle. You know, if you take a look at Phil Harris, this hand's extended, okay? The other hand is grasping his thigh to defend it, all right? Because of that, that means that if Nicky were to go for a back step, he would have that hand. See how he's using that hand defensively right there? The right hand. He's pushing down on that. So if Nicky were to go for the back take, it wouldn't be available, and Phil would be able to limp arm and pull out just as he did in the previous sequence. Nicky recognized that, and now take a look at what this foot is doing. It's punching through, and see how it pushes at the crook of the elbow, and that breaks the grip here. That allows this leg to come out, and he locks up a trap triangle here. He just goes to he finishes with a bottom arm lock, but the entry is the same. Okay, very, very nice sequence by Nicky. Let's look at that again. So we'll start from the very beginning. So he's got a head-in shoulder crunch, okay? Now he's going to take his left arm, pummels it to the inside. Now, with that inside position, he can push across his chest, Phil Harris's chest, to allow his knee to come into place, and he pummels it over the top. Now he's in the arm saddle. Now here, he's got to decide what to do based on those two defensive variables. Are Phil Harris's shoulders low, or are they very high, or are they kind of like in the middle, right? We're going to see there's different offensive reactions we're going to have based on, you know, how high his shoulders are. Okay, there's different ranges of that. And then is he grasping his hands together, or is he grasping his thigh? Which means if he's grasping his thigh, his other hand presumably is free to perform defensive movements with. Okay, now in this case, his shoulders are pretty low. Okay, I'd categorize this as like a low shoulder posture, and in addition, his hand is free. Okay, his secondary hand of his secondary arm. Now,
Because his shoulders are low, the back take could have been available. But because that secondary arm is free, the hand is available to post with, the back take is a very difficult thing to go for. Okay, so instead what Nicky does is, this is very key here, the action of this leg right here, pushing at the crook of this bicep, okay, the bicep and the elbow, to make it difficult for this hand to continue to push downwards. And then he's able to free this other leg out. He can lock up the trap triangle and get his offense going. Okay, it's very key that you understand how these things interact with one another. Okay, if you want to play the arm settle effectively, you need to understand how all the different offensive pieces connect. Okay, you can't just have one good arm settle attack, because the whole point of the arm saddle is to have a wide array of attacks that cover the weaknesses of the other attacks. That's why it's a strong position. That's why it's a stronger position, for instance, than just a traditional bottom Judy Gatami, which only really has one strong offensive direction. That's a straight arm lock. Okay. Now we're going to see another match in Grapple Fest where Ono Flanagan on the bottom. So you see here, he's got initially he started with a head in shoulder crunch. Now he's going to convert it to a head out. See how he's bringing the elbow underneath. He's trying to get underneath the chin. Right there, he gets it. He pushes with the knee, and he pummels through to an arm saddle. This time, however, and his opponent has his hands connected, so his hand's not free to post. What we're going to see is his opponent shifts from his hands connected to his hand free to push and free his arm. Okay? Now, in the time given, it would have been, because this is a pretty aggressive and fast movement, and because he got his shoulders up very high, it honestly would have been almost impossible to shift into that front triangle in the way Nicky did. In such a situation, I would have recommended a shift into an offense against the lower body. Okay, so what we see here. So you see, some of the variables are the same, right? He's shifting from he's grasping his hands together, and then he goes from that to his secondary arm being free to post. That could indicate to us that the front triangle would be available if his shoulders are low. If we see here, his hand's free and his shoulders are low. He raises it, which is why Nicky switches to the arm lock rather than the triangle, but it's not fast enough. Okay, it's low at the beginning, right here. This is pretty low, the height of his shoulders. Whereas by contrast, here, man, the shoulders are very damn high. Hard to get the front triangle in such a situation. Okay, so instead, I would recommend a shift into an attack on the lower body, and there are multiple ways to do that. You could go to a K guard, you could go to an Imanari roll, all sorts of things. All right. Regardless, he gets out. We're going to see one more example of this. It's a pretty similar one. I was there for this match. I was watching it in the back. I competed on the same event, and I thought it was a very interesting match. He shifts to a Kimura here. So this time he gets the Kimura grip. Definitely going to be stickier, harder for his opponent to escape from. But what we're going to see is the same basic problem emerges where he brings his shoulders up just too high. Now here you see Owen's trying to get that front triangle, but man, the shoulders are just too high. In this case, I would have recommended if Owen would have taken his left arm and make a scoop grip right here, he could potentially have then taken this left leg, put the foot over this hip, and gone right into a K guard, backside 50-50 outside reap on this leg. But it's the guy gets out too fast. Okay, so let's look at that one more time. So he goes, it's a head in, and then he goes, this time he goes right to the Kimura. That's another transition we can make. Sometimes if we get a head in shoulder crunch, we don't always have to go into the head out shoulder crunch. We can go right into the Kimura grip arm saddle. Okay, that's another possible transition that we can make. Now, we're going to see, he puts him in the arm saddle. So right now, Owen's got an arm saddle. But man, this guy is posturing up very high. He's stepping up. He's using a secondary arm to push. At this point, that front triangle is a damn hard thing to get. You can see he's trying to get this leg over this side of his neck and then the knee behind his head to create that closed set of wedges, but it's a difficult thing to do at this point. And again, I would have recommended a transition into the lower body. Okay. Now the final sequence of movements we're going to look at is a bit of a combination of the first and the second. Okay, so we're going to see how we can use other arm entanglements, Kimura, bottom, Juji, Gatami, etc., to sequence into the arm saddle. And then we're going to look at how we can use the arm saddle once again to get to the front triangle when he defends in a certain way. All right, So Garry rolls for a Kimura. This is Garry Tonon at EBI. And here, again, I mentioned this earlier. Sometimes when we gain Kimuras from a single leg or rolling situations, our leg's going to be on the inside. In such situations, it's no big deal. We can use this other leg here to free our leg. Okay, just like it did. Now look, once again, we're in a T Kimura. This is basically identical to what Gianni and Emilia had earlier. Now, Gary's opponent is heisting up to his base. And what Gary's going to do is he goes to take the back at first, but he moves too fast, the opponent that is. And what we're going to see happens is Garry goes first. This is a bottom Juji Gatami, just a regular bottom Juji Gatami. All right. Now Gary's going to take his head and move it to the other side, and now he has a bottom. Now he has a bottom arm saddle. Okay. Now it's a pretty fast sequence. Let's take a look at that again. Look. So he's got the T. This is a T Kimura. In a T Kimura, the guy can either just lie here, in which case you can kick your leg up and you can come up to a side Kimura position. There's all sorts of things you can do there. More often than not, however, what they're going to do is they're going to try to build up to their base because they don't want to get put into that chest-to-chest pin type situation. So he's going to build up to his base, at which point there's going to be space between his elbow and his hip and knee, where Garry would try to put the knee to the inside to take the back. Okay, but sometimes the guy comes up too fast. This is very similar, again, to what happened with Gianni and Emilia. In cases like that, you can go right into other attacks. Here, Garry goes into a bottom Juji Gatami. From the bottom Juji Gatami, if we can get our head to the other side, you could spin it underneath, or in this case, Garry builds up to his base and brings it over this way. So there's different ways you can make that transition, you see. So now he gets to the arm saddle. Now from the arm saddle here, take a look at what he does. He goes right into the front triangle. Now this was a case actually where the guy's hands were connected, so Garry could have gone for the back here, okay? And the guy's posture wasn't too high. He simply decided to go for the front triangle. So, and the reason for that is because while his hands were connected, the elbows weren't tight into his hips. Okay, you can see as he's standing up here, there's limb extension. Hopefully we can see it here. Yeah, you can see his limbs are fairly extended here, right? That's what gave Garry the ability to pummel his legs through to that front triangle. So if the guy's hands are connected, okay, sometimes his hands are going to be connected and they're super tight, in which case the back is the option you should go for. In fact, I would generally recommend going for the back if his hands are connected no matter what. However, you could hypothetically still go to the front triangle, okay, as long as his arms are extended. Now, if his arm is free, his secondary arm is free, and he's posting to defend, in that case, you don't have a choice. You do have to go for the front triangle, because if you go for the back, he has too many strong defensive resources to inhibit it, okay? So anyway, I hope this has been helpful to you guys to take a look at some basics of the arm saddle and start to see how you can sequence different offensive movements from the position.